Hi, I'm Jason Inman.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And we're here to review Black Lightning Episode 7, Equinox, the Book of Faith. And if you haven't seen this episode, you might want to come back later because there will be spoilers.
Black Lightning's pursuit of Tobias continues. Anissa continues to find herself in the new normal.
Okay, the new normal is a very fitting way for that description to begin because we are in a brand new world since the last episode revealed that Anissa has powers, and we start right off. I love Black Lightning just picking up the pieces right where the last episode left off. Anissa is getting an examination from her mother, and I love her questioning her dad's his policy on non-violence. She even brings it up. She's just like, he's quoting Martin Luther King to me all the time, and he's Black Lightning? You know?
I just love that her brain goes right from, like, she's not even mad at her dad for what happened. It goes right to, we're going to team up, and we're going to save the freaking world.
We're going to save Freeland.
Her hope and her optimism and her purity in that moment. Like, of course, some of that is born out of naivete, but it's so refreshing. And it's so just, I just thought it was a delightful way to open this episode.
It's very much from a young perspective because we then see that switch later in the dialogue with the scene where her mom is like, whoa, 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 chill out. And she says the line to her mom, which is a very teenager line. No offense to our teenagers out there, but it's true. Do you have powers, Mom? Then you don't get me.
Yeah.
You know, which is something very much that a kid would say something to a parent.
But she does come around to understanding that the Black Lightning identity is what broke up their marriage. And I think that's what sits with her.
Yes.
More than the implications that you might go out and fight in the streets and get hurt.
Yes, totally. We then find out that Gambly finally reveals to Jefferson that he's known about Tobias well. And that,
I mean, basically because Jefferson has his number and knows it. Like, he backs Gamby into a corner.
Well, I think because Jefferson knows his adoptive dad. Knows how he acts. Very similar to a scene that we will see later in the episode where Jennifer knows her father and knows when her father is acting weird and stuff like that. And we get the kind of break. I think this is going to be the start of the break of the season where Jefferson says to Gamby, I don't trust you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't trust you.
There's a couple Gamby things that happen in this episode. I'm sure we'll address all of them, where you can kind of see his facade has some pretty big cracks in it right now.
Yes. We then get a scene where Tobias takes out a pretty big fighter, which I'm certain that it says to set us up for the big fight between Black Lightning and Tobias, because we have to prove that Tobias is a threat.
I thought this was a really cool fight. I really appreciated that Crondon Jones, who plays Tobias well, he did the entire fight.
Yeah,
no, it's not terribly complicated, but anytime an actor's doing all their own stunts, I really appreciate it. And the slow-mo hit to his face and the snap, the move that they did with the camera, I thought was really, really cool.
Let's talk about something else that's really cool. Henderson proving himself to be a good cop by coming up with the connection between, if they're attacking Lynn and then they attacked your daughters, like 5 episodes ago, maybe this is related. And, on many of these other shows, on Flash, on Arrow, we see situations like this, and the cops never put it together. In fact, our own favorite Captain Lance, played by Paul Blackthorne,
bless Lance.
He never figured out that the cape, the hood, was Oliver Queen. And I like that Henderson is just like, man, this is just too damn coincidental.
Yeah, he goes, maybe you have some enemies.
Yes,
what
exactly.
Did you do?
Exactly, because this is, and I wonder if this is the weakness of a superhero show like this in the modern internet landscape where privacy doesn't exist anymore and camera phones are abundant, that secret identities are maybe just impossible to have anymore.
Maybe. Maybe.
Because it is too damn coincidental. And there's a couple points. I'm gonna bring a couple of them up later on where I'm just like, how do they not know that Jefferson's Black Lightning? How do they not know this?
Well, look, everyone in Central City knows that Barry's the Flash.
That's right.
He's still getting along. So give Jefferson a pass.
Then there's a great scene that I won't give a pass where Jefferson and Lynn are in a parking lot after the police station and they have to deal with the fact that both their girls might have powers.
They literally say, what if Jen has inherited powers too?
Yes. I thought this was a great scene. I thought there was some powerful acting in here. And to be honest with you, again, it goes back to the point where both of these characters are very strong parents. They're very logical. They don't really jump to a lot of emotional conclusions that we've seen in other shows and other drama series. But they're very much like, oh man, we got to examine her. We got to examine her. And Jefferson's like, I'll convince her to not do this. We can't convince her to do this. And even Lynn at this point, we see her turn later in the episode, but at this point, Lynn is even very much like, man, she's going to do it. There's nothing we can say to her. She's going to do it. We get a nice little Henderson Black Lightning scene that's very Commissioner Gordonish, which I really like.
Oh, Damon Gupton's reaction to when Black Lightning says Tobias Whale, he is like visibly shook by that.
Yeah, and he says like, "What have you been? You chasing ghosts?"
Yeah, I thought that was really, really cool. And then Black Lightning says he looks like he hasn't aged a day in 30 years, which is something that we brought up and something that people commented on that was part of
the formula.
And I just think that scene was really cool, and it cements their working relationship just in time to shatter it in a couple more minutes.
Can we also talk about, I noticed this in this episode for the very first time, Jefferson's demeanor when he's Black Lightning is, and I mean this term in no offense, very much more street.
Absolutely. He changes the vernacular he uses. He changes the speech pattern that he uses, and it does sound a little more street.
To me, it's the Black Lightning's writer's sort of little wink to the Black Lightning comic books, because in the original Black Lightning comic books, Jefferson wore a fro. His mask included a fro so that people wouldn't confuse him or be able to identify him. But also, he also, because it was the 70s, spoke jive so that people would never put that Jefferson Pierce principal was Black Lightning.
I mean, to me, too, that's just like a classic good Bruce Wayne move. Like, if you're going to go so far as to modulate your voice, change your speech pattern as well. That's just good identity covering up.
Now, let's talk about Gamby visits Lady Eve, and he's like, we need to take Tobias down. This whole ecosystem that we built is going to be ruined. Okay.
I just wrote, Gamby's a bad guy.
Well, let's break this down a little bit, because we do see Gamby being an even further bad guy later on in the episode. In the comic books, Gamby is sort of the guy that served up Alvin Pierce, Jefferson's father, to be killed by Tobias Whale. Like, he's the reason why. And Jefferson finds out, and Gamby sort of sacrifices himself at the end, so he sort of gets a hero's ending. Yeah. This seems like Gamby built this whole criminal infrastructure, and that maybe secretly he was the Godfather? Right? Am I, like, this makes Gamby off as, like, more of the villain of this series. Maybe more of the villain of the series than Tobias Whale might be.
I think he absolutely is, because he has cemented himself. And he said in a previous episode to Lady Eve, I taught you everything that you know. He's the head of this criminal empire. Now, based on the way James Remar is playing it, and based on his relationship with Jefferson, I wonder if in this version he didn't intentionally serve up Alvin, but that's something that maybe had to happen. And he seems to have a lot of guilt about that.
Yeah.
But he's still, to me, it's very clear that, like, he's the person at the top. I also want to shout out, every time they shoot Lady Eve, whether she's in the morgue or she's in her home, the set design and the set dressing is just, like, out of this world. The first shot we see of her when she's in her office in the earlier scene reminded me of Cottonmouth in Luke Cage. Like, it's just so designed to show how powerful and how sexy she is, and it takes my breath away every time we see it.
Then we find out that Anissa finds out that David Poe, Alvin's old editor, died in a hit and run. Now, this is part of the conspiracy that she found out about the experiments. This is leads to the CAT scan that Lynn had that looks exactly like Jefferson's CAT scan, which leads us to believe that Jefferson was also experimented on the same way that all these other kids were. That maybe Jefferson is part of that, which is a prediction that we've offered up. Let me ask you this, because I had this thought during this episode. Do we think Gamby is tied to the experimentation as well? That Gamby maybe offered Jefferson up?
I think 1,000%.
Yeah. I think you're going to find out that the criminal enterprises were allowed to happen as part of the trade-off for these criminals serving up these kids to be experimented on.
And I appreciate this scene with Anissa coming in the episode where it does, because we have the scene with her with Lynn where she's like, nah, Dad and I are going to team up and we're going to do it. She has a scene with Jefferson where she's like, Dad, we're going to team up and we're going to do it. And this is the moment of the real-world reality check where she has to be faced with, like, this might be the reality
consequences
of what will happen if I do this. And I think it comes at the perfect spot in her arc throughout this episode.
Sure. Then we see Secret Agent Agent Gamby, or the Shadow, as I like to call him, with his little mask and his
fedora
hat.
I wrote that too. I remember he looks like the Shadow.
Gamby knows.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So of course he sneaks into Joey Toledo's place and he takes them all out. And Gamby's a total badass.
Yeah,
that's all. That's all you need to say about that.
Totally.
And then it's even more badass move that Gamby is like, "It's me, sucker."
Yeah.
It's me, sucker. It's also very interesting that very later in this episode, we get a flip where Lynn is kind of okay with Anissa being a vigilante. And she goes to Jefferson and she's like, look, you got to train her. And you got to go out there and you got to protect her. And you've got to show her the ropes because you've been doing this for X amount of years. I know you've been off for 9 years and you're a little rusty, but damn it, back then you were like lightning sharp.
Also,
pun intended.
Also, that scene, she's sitting on the stairs and she's backlit by this purple light. This episode is so beautiful. Lynn looks stunning, and the framing of her in this is just like, she looks like a model. Like, it's such a beautiful episode. It takes my breath away.
So we then go to Tobias finding out that inside the little chest that was laid on Joey's chest, chest, get it, is full of dust again, which is a reference back to the
albino bone dust.
The albino bone dust from the legend. And Tobias is like, I'm going to take out Lady Eve, but I need the permission of the Shadow Board.
Yeah, and I Googled it, and I couldn't find what that is, so I think that's going to be a really interesting revelation.
I think that's going to be whatever Gamby was a part of.
Do you think that's why Gamby looks like the Shadow?
No. I just think it's some sort of secret cabal.
I agree.
What my prediction is that Gamby is a part of the government agent that is doing the modern experimentation on kids, the same government little agency that did the experimentation on Jefferson.
Yeah.
And I think as part of that, they set up a criminal empire to control Freeland to let them experiment on kids. Gamby retired from this federal agent thing, but since he knew all the people running the criminal enterprises, he made himself wealthy on the side.
Yeah.
So he could set them up. But he set all these people up when he was in the agency, and I think he's still badass, as proved when he kills Joey.
Totally.
That no one's going to screw with him. So if he shows up and is like, look, you're not going to do this, they're all going to be like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
But again, we're getting more interesting layers. Black Lightning sort of moving out of the street violence and the real world issues and giving us this very interesting underneath the light conspiracy, which I really like.
I'm totally into the conspiracy theory.
So Henderson again is a smart cop, but he goes to a rooftop and talks to Black Lightning. He's literally feet away from Jefferson Pierce, and it is a very brightly lit rooftop. I don't care that Jefferson changed his voice.
He's blinded by the day glow.
Well, I guess, but still, like, I was just like, look, Henderson recognized this guy.
Yeah.
All right. We got to talk about as well, there's always a great moment in superhero stories where superheroes first learn of their suit. And I really liked the moment where Gamby handed the plans to Anissa suit. Now, he is going a little bit overboard because she is bulletproof, and he's like, look, I'm going to make it bulletproof too, and I'm going to make it fireproof, shark-proof, tornado-proof, alien-proof. Like,
I thought it was cool because earlier in the episode, there's a shot of him, like, with design prints
he's sort of,
on the computer.
Or he's sketching a little bit,
And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's Anissa's, because we've seen the photos of Anissa's suit already. So I think it's cool, and I think letting her bask in that moment was very sweet.
Yes, and especially that it was Lynn's idea.
Lynn is present for it.
Yeah, that Lynn was like, okay, if you're going to do this, it's interesting because
you're going to have the best protection.
Because it's her daughter. She's like, you know, I'm going to make sure you're protected. Now, with her husband, she's like, look, no. But with her daughter, she's there. I loved the scene where Black Lightning kind of seemed like towards the end of the episode, he just stood there and watched a club. And I was like, are you going to do anything this episode, Black Lightning?
I think you actually said, quit standing around on rooftops.
Exactly, I did. That's all he was doing, just staring. I'm going to find that Tobias whale. Tobias walks in the club. Black Lightning is there, and I loved.
I think we cheered when this happened.
Well, I loved Tobias's reaction where he was like, "Damn!" Like he was just there.
It was so great.
Or no, he's like, "You got to be kidding me!" Is what he said. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And then this giant fight happened. We get to see the lightning shield again, which is a classic Black Lightning comic book power.
I live for it. It's so great.
And then Tori gets shot and dies, and it appears that Tobias gets shot as well. Of course, Tobias Whale going away. But that last fight was really good.
I really liked the moment where Black Lightning is over Tori's body and he so badly wants her to live. Like, it doesn't matter to him that this woman works with Tobias.
And it's kind of like she forces herself to die.
Yeah, all he wants is Tobias. And you can tell that it hurts him that she was collateral damage.
And then we gotta talk about the fight that was happening at the same time. Tobias trying to take out Lady Eve with lightning guns.
Oh, man, of course.
Where did they get the lightning guns? But then, of course, it becomes the frame up of Black Lightning, which is a smart move and smart writing on Tobias's part.
To shout out to Lady Eve, because she gets a kick-ass moment where she's beating the crap out of a guy. And I just have to say, women, DC TV's pretty good about letting women have kick-ass fights, but like voluptuous women don't often get this opportunity.
I don't think there are very many voluptuous women in these shows.
And I thought it was great she just got even cooler, and I was like, we're bummed that she died.
Then we gotta talk about Cress Williams and his daughter's his fictional daughters, of course, his final scene with them. Where he agrees to train her. And I love his speech. The writing, the dialogue was so on point where he's like, I'm a hypocrite. We're going to make mistakes. What I do know is this. I'm going to teach my daughter. And then I love the moment where she was like, man, not only are you like a cool dad and you're a cool principal, but you're the greatest hero.
Yeah.
And he follows it even better. Like, just when you can't think, you have not reached the top of like, oh, man.
Yeah.
They find the pure emotion in this scene, and his final line to her is, be better than me. Which is just like,
Watching the scene just made me miss my dad. I thought it was it was the best part of the whole episode.
Well, this is finally the show living up to the thing that I thought it was going to be since the pilot, which is the superhero family show, which is what makes it so much different than all the DC TV shows. Again, at every turn, Black Lightning's choices are like, how do we make this so distinct from the other shows?
And I want to commend this show because it only takes the span of an episode for this to turn.
Yeah.
For him to turn from like, I don't want to work with you as a superhero to like, okay, we're
other shows would have carried this out for a season.
But but it's quick. And we've seen quick things happen in other shows, but I just think it's so earnestly played out and so well written that it doesn't feel too fast. And I think in some other shows it could have felt too fast.
Now, we get a final scene where Lala wakes up.
You know, that guy who we've missed.
How connected to Lady Eve is this? Is this part of Lady Eve like resurrecting people a la 6 Feet Under?
100,000%.
What the hell is it? I have no idea what's going on here.
I have no idea either. I think there's also the reveal that Lawanda is there. Now, in the 2 episodes that dealt with Lawanda's story, it was called Lawanda the Book of Death and then Lawanda the Book of Life. So I'm wondering if there's was supposed to be implication there, and that's what's leading to this. But there's clearly magic afoot, and I'm super into it.
All right, let's go straight into the rating of this episode based on a scale of 1 to 5. Ashley, what would you give this episode of Black Lightning?
Man, this episode, Equinox, the book of something, because they're all the books of things, is a tremendous episode. I think Black Lightning is never going to get better than it is. And even when it gives me the most obvious thing, like Black Lightning and To Be Named Thunder teaming up, it just turns out to be everything I want. And there's so much heart, and there's such good writing, and there's a cool fight. 5, great episode.
Wow.
What are you going to give this episode of Black Lightning?
This was a great episode of Black Lightning. I loved all the beats with Anissa. I thought those were good. I thought the twists with Gambi are very interesting. The weakness of this episode is that there is no clear through line for Black Lightning. And this show is called Black Lightning. Black Lightning does nothing but stand on a rooftop waiting for Tobias to show up.
I mean, devil's advocate, it's about him learning how he feels about Anissa.
Sure.
But I take your point.
Yes, I don't feel that this episode was as focused as I felt last week's was or some of the other previous episodes. It is still an amazing episode with amazing performances, but it is not a perfect episode of Black Lightning, especially because we have to have Tobias get away because we got to carry the season on. This is a 4 out of 5. So not perfect, but still damn good. So go down in the comments, tell us what you thought about Black Lightning. While you're down there, click subscribe, because if you like these videos, I think you'll like all of our videos.
And if you want even more exclusive geeky content, head on over to patreon.com/Jawiin and join our Super Justice League of Super Friends Hall of Justice.
Head over there and give us value if you've ever got value from any of those videos, and we'll see you for the next review, Super Friends.